Time feels like the most real thing in the universe. It flows forward, carrying us from birth to death. We treat it as absolute, unavoidable, and indifferent to everything we do. Every memory, every plan, every fear assumes one simple truth. Time moves in one direction, and nothing can escape it. But this sense of flow may be the greatest illusion in the history of science. For centuries, physicists believed the universe worked like a perfect clock. According to this view, time ticked evenly for everyone, everywhere, whether anything happened or not. It was an invisible background that existed independently of matter, motion, and observers. Reality unfolded inside time, never questioning its authority. This idea worked beautifully for planets and machines. It explained falling apples, orbiting moons, and the predictable motion of gears. Time felt so reliable that it almost disappeared from thought. It was simply assumed to be there, constant and universal. But when science pushed deeper, the clock began to break. As physicists zoomed in, past planets, past atoms, and into the quantum world, they encountered a reality that no longer followed familiar rules. The neat sequence of past, present, and future started to dissolve. At the smallest scales, nature stopped behaving like a machine and began behaving like a probability. In the quantum realm, particles do not have definite positions in space or time. A particle is not simply here or there. It exists in a spread of possibilities, occupying multiple states at once. Only when it interacts with something else does one outcome become real. This is not a limitation of our instruments. It is how reality behaves. Quantum particles do not move smoothly from one moment to the next. They do not follow clear paths through time. Instead, they exist in a blur of probability, where events cannot always be arranged into a clean sequence. The smooth timeline we experience in daily life simply does not exist at this level. Even more unsettling, certain quantum experiments suggest that future measurement choices influence present outcomes, not by sending information backward in time, but by revealing that time was never the structure organizing events in the first place. The universe does not seem to care which moment we label as earlier or later. Cause and effect, once thought to be sacred, becomes strangely flexible. When physicists describe this behavior mathematically, something remarkable appears. Many of the fundamental equations of quantum mechanics do not require time at all. They describe relationships between states, correlations between measurements, and probabilities of outcomes, but not a flowing present, moving forward second by second. The equations work perfectly, without a clock. This absence is not accidental, it is a clue. If the deepest laws of nature function without time, then perhaps time is not fundamental. Perhaps it is not a basic ingredient of reality, but something that emerges only under specific conditions, much like temperature or pressure. These concepts feel real, yet vanish when matter is examined closely enough. To understand this, imagine removing time from the universe entirely. No seconds passing, no universal now. What remains is not chaos, but structure. Particles still interact, states still relate, possibilities still exist. The universe continues to function, but nothing demands that events line up along a single timeline. In this picture, the universe does not evolve the way we imagine. It does not flow from past to future. Instead, it exists as a complete network of relationships. Change still occurs, but change does not require time as we experience it. It requires only differences between states. This idea feels deeply wrong because it contradicts everything we feel. We feel time passing. We feel moments slipping away. We feel urgency, regret, anticipation. But intuition has misled us before. Solidity feels real, yet matter is mostly empty space. Heat feels continuous, yet it emerges from countless invisible collisions. Sound feels smooth, yet it is built from discrete vibrations. Time may be another illusion, born from complexity. At the quantum level, there is no shared, present moment. Different processes do not agree on what now means. Without a universal present, the idea of a single cosmic clock collapses. What remains is probability. Quantum theory does not describe what will happen next in time, but what could happen when systems interact. Possibility replaces sequence. As systems grow larger and interactions multiply, something new begins to emerge. Patterns stabilize, records form, memory becomes possible. When information can be stored and compared, sequences begin to matter. The sense of past and future slowly takes shape. Time may emerge, the way waves emerge from water. Individual molecules do not carry waves. Waves arise only when many molecules move together. In the same way, time may arise only when countless quantum events align into stable patterns that can be remembered. At the deepest level of reality, there may be no past or future at all, only structure, difference, and possibility. What we call time may not be a law of physics, but a useful approximation that appears when systems become complex enough. This raises an uncomfortable possibility. Time may not be something the universe experiences. We may be the ones creating it. The human brain is a prediction machine. It constantly compares stored information with incoming signals, creating a sense of continuity. Memory creates the past. Anticipation creates the future. Conscious awareness stitches these together into the illusion of a moving present. From this perspective, time is not something we observe. It is something we generate. This does not make time meaningless. It makes it local, conditional, real for us, but not necessarily real for the universe itself. Time may exist only for systems capable of remembering and anticipating change. If that is true, then time is not a river carrying us forward. It is a mental framework that allows us to navigate a timeless reality. The universe may not be a movie playing frame by frame. It may be a complete structure where every frame exists at once and motion is something experienced from within. We are not outside this structure watching it unfold. We are patterns inside it, moving through relationships that feel like flow. This perspective changes everything. If time is not fundamental, then nothing is truly being lost. Moments do not vanish into the past. They remain part of the structure of reality. Your experiences may not be slipping away. They may be permanently written into the universe. And if time is an illusion, then the fear of running out of it begins to lose its grip. But this idea raises a deeper question. If time emerges from complexity, what gives it a direction? Why does it seem to flow forward and not backward? Why do we remember the past, but not the future? To answer that, we must explore entropy, memory, and the arrow of time. And that is where the story moves next. Why time feels so real to us. If time may not exist at the deepest level of reality, then a disturbing contradiction appears. We do not experience time as optional or fragile. We experience it as overwhelming. Time dominates our thoughts, our language, our fears, and our hopes. We plan around it. We worry about losing it. We measure our lives by how much of it we think we have left. Whatever time truly is, it feels unavoidable. This feeling is not abstract. It is intimate. We wake up already inside time. We remember yesterday. We anticipate tomorrow. The present moment feels like a thin slice moving forward, carrying us with it. Even when nothing changes around us, time still seems to pass. This constant sense of motion is so familiar that we rarely question it. But familiarity does not equal fundamentality. The first reason time feels real is simple. Our minds are built to believe in it. The human brain did not evolve to understand the universe. It evolved to survive inside it. To survive, an organism must track change. It must remember what happened before and predict what might happen next. From this basic need, the concepts of past, present, and future naturally emerge. Memory creates the past. Anticipation creates the future. Conscious awareness stitches them together into a moving present. This stitching happens automatically. You do not decide to experience time. Your brain generates it continuously, the way it generates color, depth, and sound. None of those exist as properties of the external world in the way we perceive them. They are interpretations. Time may be the same. Consider memory. Without memory, the past does not exist psychologically. Patients with severe memory loss do not experience a flowing life story. They live in isolated moments, disconnected from before and after. For them, time collapses. This alone tells us something important. Time, as we feel it, depends on memory. The future, too, is constructed. The brain constantly simulates possible outcomes. It predicts danger, reward, and opportunity. This ability to imagine what has not yet happened is one of humanity's greatest strengths. But it comes with a cost. It creates anxiety, anticipation, and the sense that something is always approaching. Past and future are not places we visit. They are mental models. Yet these models feel so real that we build our entire civilization around them. We invent clocks to standardize experience, calendars to coordinate behavior, deadlines to enforce urgency, age to define identity. From childhood, we are trained to think of life as a timeline with milestones, progress, and decline. Clocks do not create time, but they reinforce it. A clock divides continuous experience into units, seconds, minutes, hours. Once divided, time becomes countable. Once countable, it becomes valuable. And once valuable, it becomes something we fear losing. This is when time transforms from a background into a pressure. Aging intensifies this pressure. The body changes in one direction only. Cells degrade, recovery slows, wrinkles appear. These physical changes anchor the idea of time to something undeniable. Even if physics questions time, the body seems to confirm it. But biology is not proof of fundamentality. It is proof of direction. The direction we associate with time is deeply tied to survival. Organisms that remembered danger lived longer than those that did not. Organisms that anticipated threats survived to reproduce. Over millions of years, brains that constructed a reliable sense of before and after were selected for. Time, in this sense, is a survival interface. This also explains our emotional attachment to time. Regret exists because we remember past actions and imagine alternative outcomes. Fear exists because we imagine future pain. Hope exists because we imagine future reward. None of these emotions require time to be fundamental. They require time to be experienced. This is why time feels personal. Two people can live through the same hour and experience it completely differently. Waiting in fear makes time stretch. Being absorbed in joy makes it vanish. If time were an objective flow like a river, this would not happen. But if time is a cognitive construction, it makes perfect sense. Psychology confirms this again and again. Time perception speeds up with age. Children experience summers as endless. Adults feel years disappear. The external clock has not changed. The brain has. Attention alters time. Trauma can freeze moments in memory. Meditation can dissolve the sense of passing altogether. Under certain drugs or neurological conditions, people report existing outside time in a perpetual now. These experiences are not glitches. They are clues. They show that time is flexible. If time were a fundamental feature of reality, it would not be so easily distorted by brain states. Gravity does not feel different when you are bored. Electricity does not slow when you are afraid. Time does. This suggests that the strongest evidence for time's reality may actually be evidence for its psychological origin. But the illusion runs deeper than emotion. Language itself encodes time. Verbs are structured around tense. Stories demand sequence. Cause and effect are embedded in grammar. We are trained from childhood to narrate our lives as stories moving forward. Once narrative becomes the default mode of thought, time becomes unavoidable. We do not just live in time. We tell ourselves time. And stories demand direction. The brain is not comfortable with randomness. It seeks patterns. It imposes order. When events occur, the brain arranges them into sequences, even when none objectively exist. This pattern-seeking instinct creates the sense that one thing leads to another, that the world unfolds rather than simply exists. From this perspective, time is a compression tool. It allows the brain to reduce overwhelming complexity into manageable narratives. Instead of seeing the universe as a static structure of relationships, we experience it as a movie. Movies feel real because they move, but the movement is an illusion created by frames shown in sequence. Remove the viewer, and the motion disappears. The same may be true of time. This does not mean time is fake in a trivial sense. Illusions can be powerful. Color is an illusion. Pain is an interpretation. Yet both are real experiences. Time may be the same, not fundamental to the universe, but fundamental to us. Feeling real does not mean being fundamental. This distinction matters because when we confuse psychological reality with physical necessity, we misunderstand the universe and ourselves. Physics suggests that at the deepest level, reality may be timeless, but biology demands that organisms operate as if time flows. Consciousness emerges at the intersection of these two truths. We are creatures built to navigate change inside a universe that may not care about sequence. This tension explains why the idea of timelessness feels threatening. If time is not fundamental, then what happens to meaning, to growth, to choice, to death? These fears are understandable. They come from confusing experience with ontology. Meaning does not require time to flow. It requires relationships. Choice does not require a future that does not exist yet. It requires decision-making within a structure. Even death does not require time to erase existence. It only requires change of state. Our discomfort comes from imagining timelessness incorrectly. We imagine stasis, stillness, frozen reality. But physics does not suggest that. It suggests structure, without flow. A book does not flow, yet its story exists fully. Each chapter is real, whether or not you are reading it. The reader experiences sequence. The book does not. We may be the readers of a timeless universe. From inside the story, time feels real. From outside, the story simply is. This perspective reframes our emotional relationship with time. The fear of running out of time is not a cosmic truth. It is a biological impulse, a useful one, but not an ultimate one. Urgency helped our ancestors survive. It does not define reality. When we say time is precious, what we really mean is experience is precious. When we fear the future, we fear uncertainty. When we regret the past, we regret information we cannot change. None of these require time to be fundamental. They require consciousness. Time feels real because consciousness needs it to function. And that leads to a subtle but profound shift. If time emerges from how minds process reality, then understanding time means understanding consciousness, not just physics. The universe may be timeless, but we are not. We live inside the interface evolution built for us, an interface that simplifies, orders, and directs experience. Time is one of its most powerful features. This does not make time an enemy or a lie, it makes it a tool, and tools can be used wisely or blindly. When we mistake time for an external force pushing us forward, we feel powerless. When we recognize it as a mode of experience, we regain agency. The clock may measure change, but it does not define meaning. Meaning comes from attention, not duration. A short moment of clarity can outweigh years of routine. A single connection can matter more than a long life lived unconsciously. These truths feel intuitive because they are aligned with how experience actually works. Time does not give value to moments. Awareness does, and this realization prepares us for the next question. If time feels real because of memory and entropy, why does it flow in only one direction? Why do we remember the past, but not the future? That question takes us beyond psychology and into the physics of disorder. Before time was questioned by quantum physics, it was already quietly falling apart somewhere else. Long before particles blurred into probabilities, classical physics itself carried a hidden flaw. A flaw so deep that once it was exposed, time could never be seen the same way again. For centuries, time was treated as absolute. It was assumed to flow at the same rate everywhere, for everyone, no matter what. Whether you were standing still or racing through space, time was believed to tick forward, identically. This view reached its most precise form in classical physics. The universe was imagined as a perfectly ordered machine, governed by laws that unfolded inside a universal clock. That clock did not belong to any object. It did not depend on motion, gravity, or observation. It simply existed. In this framework, time was the ultimate referee. It told events when to happen and in what order. Cause always came before effect. The present moment was shared by the entire universe. There was a single, universal now. This picture felt natural because it matched everyday experience. We all seem to agree on what time it is. Clocks on Earth stay synchronized. Events appear to happen in a common order. Nothing in daily life suggests that time itself might behave differently, depending on where you are or how you move. But nature does not care about comfort. At the start of the 20th century, cracks began to appear. Experiments involving light revealed something strange. No matter how fast an observer moved, the speed of light always appeared the same. This result made no sense under classical ideas of time and space. If time were absolute, speeds should simply add up. If you chased a beam of light, you should see it slow down. But nature refused. Light always traveled at the same speed, no matter who measured it. To resolve this contradiction, physics had to sacrifice something, and that something was time. The person who made that sacrifice unavoidable was Albert Einstein. Einstein did not start by trying to destroy time. He started by asking a simple question. What if the laws of physics are the same for everyone, no matter how they move? And what if the speed of light really is constant for all observers? To make those two ideas coexist, time itself had to change. Einstein realized that time could not be universal if light was. Instead of one absolute clock for the universe, each observer would carry their own clock, and those clocks would not always agree. Time, he showed, depends on motion. According to Einstein's theory of special relativity, the faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. This is not an illusion or a mechanical effect. Time itself slows down. This effect is known as time dilation. If two identical clocks are synchronized and then separated, one remaining on Earth and the other moving at high speed, they will no longer match when reunited. The moving clock will show less elapsed time. It will have experienced fewer moments. This is not theoretical. It has been measured repeatedly. One of the simplest ways to understand this is the famous twin scenario. Imagine two twins born at the same time. One stays on Earth. The other travels into space at a speed close to light, turns around, and returns. When they reunite, the traveling twin is younger. Not because their body aged differently in some biological sense, but because they experienced less time. Their clock literally ran slower during the journey. There is no contradiction here. Both twins experienced time normally from their own perspective. Each felt seconds ticking by as usual. The difference only appears when they compare clocks. This alone destroys the idea of absolute time. If time were universal, both twins would age the same. The fact that they do not means time cannot be a single, shared flow for the universe. But Einstein did not stop there. A few years later, he extended this idea to gravity. In his theory of general relativity, gravity is not a force pulling objects through space. It is a curvature of space-time itself. Massive objects bend the geometry of reality, and this bending affects time. According to general relativity, the stronger the gravitational field, the slower time flows. A clock closer to a massive object ticks more slowly than one farther away. This effect is small on Earth, but it is real and measurable. A clock at sea level ticks more slowly than a clock on a mountain. A clock on the surface of a planet ticks more slowly than one in orbit. Time is affected by gravity. This is not science fiction. It is built into everyday technology. GPS satellites orbiting Earth experience weaker gravity than clocks on the ground. As a result, Their clocks run faster. If engineers did not correct for this difference, GPS positioning would drift by kilometers each day. Your phone would not know where you are. Modern technology works only because time is not absolute. Speed and gravity both distort time. And once that happens, the idea of a universal present collapses. In Einstein's universe, there is no single now shared by everyone. Events that appear simultaneous to one observer may not be simultaneous to another. Two observers moving differently can disagree about the order of events. This is not a limitation of perception. It is a feature of reality. Imagine two lightning strikes hitting opposite ends of a train track. An observer standing midway between the strikes sees them happen at the same time. An observer on a train moving toward one strike and away from the other sees one flash before the other. Both observations are correct. There is no hidden true order behind them. Nature does not privilege one observer's now over another's. Simultaneity depends on motion. This is deeply unsettling because simultaneity feels fundamental. We assume the present moment is shared. We assume now means the same thing everywhere. Physics says it does not. Instead of a universal present, the universe contains many overlapping slices of time, each dependent on the observer's motion and position. Reality does not unfold in a single, global sequence. Time becomes personal. And once time is personal, the idea of a flowing cosmic clock becomes impossible. The universe cannot be described as evolving moment by moment in a single order. Different observers carve reality into different timelines, and none of them is more real than the others. This realization alone was enough to permanently crack time open. Even without quantum mechanics, time had already lost its absolute status. It had become flexible, relative, and observer-dependent. Importantly, this did not make physics chaotic. Einstein's theories are among the most precise ever created. They replaced intuitive ideas with deeper structure. Time did not disappear, but it stopped being what we thought it was. Instead of being a universal background, time became part of space-time, inseparably linked to space and motion. You cannot talk about time without talking about how and where you move. This shift had enormous consequences. It meant that the universe is not a stage where events happen in time. Time is woven into the fabric of events themselves. There is no external clock ticking away independently of reality. Once this idea is accepted, many familiar intuitions fail. There is no single timeline for the universe. There is no global present moment sweeping across existence. There is no absolute order of all events. Reality becomes a four-dimensional structure rather than a three-dimensional world evolving in time. From this perspective, the universe looks less like a movie and more like a complete space-time block where past, present, and future all exist as part of the structure. You do not move through time. You are located within it. Einstein himself was deeply aware of how strange this sounded. When a close friend died, he wrote that the distinction between past, present, and future was a stubbornly persistent illusion, not meaningless, but not fundamental either. This was a radical statement coming from someone whose work had reshaped modern science. And yet, it was unavoidable. Once time could slow, stretch, and disagree with itself, it could no longer be absolute. Once simultaneity depended on motion, the idea of a universal now vanished. Long before quantum physics questioned time's existence, relativity had already shown that time does not behave the way common sense demands. It does not flow at the same rate for everyone. It does not synchronize across the universe. It does not provide a single ordering of events. Time already behaved, unlike common sense. Quantum mechanics would later deepen the mystery, pushing time to the edge of disappearance. But relativity delivered the first decisive blow. It showed that time is not the master of the universe. It is part of the structure. And once a concept becomes part of the structure rather than the foundation, it becomes open to deeper questioning. If time can slow, stretch, and lose its universal present, then perhaps it is not fundamental after all. That realization sets the stage for the next question. If time is flexible, relative, and observer-dependent, why does it still have a direction? Why does it seem to flow forward and not backward? If time is flexible, relative, and possibly not fundamental, one mystery remains stubbornly intact. No matter how strange physics becomes, time still seems to move in one direction. We remember the past, not the future. Causes appear to come before effects. Broken things do not spontaneously reassemble. This one-way direction is called the arrow of time, and it shapes everything we experience. The arrow of time feels so obvious that it rarely gets questioned. We age forward, not backward. Smoke spreads, but never gathers itself back into a flame. Coffee cools down, but never heats itself up again. These patterns feel like laws of nature, as deep as gravity or light. But they are not. At the deepest level, physics does not prefer a direction of time. Most fundamental laws work just as well forward as backward. The arrow we experience does not come from the equations of motion themselves. It comes from something else. That something else is entropy. Entropy is often described as disorder, but that description is incomplete. A better way to think of entropy is as the number of possible arrangements a system can have. High entropy means there are many ways to arrange things. Low entropy means there are very few. This idea does not require math to understand. Imagine a deck of cards. A brand new deck, perfectly ordered, has very low entropy. There is essentially one special arrangement we recognize as ordered. Shuffle the deck, and the number of possible arrangements explodes. Almost every shuffled deck looks random. High entropy states vastly outnumber low entropy ones. The key insight is this: systems naturally move from less probable states to more probable ones. That movement creates the arrow of time. When you drop a glass and it shatters, the shards scatter across the floor. This feels irreversible, but physics does not forbid the shards from reassembling. The laws that govern atomic motion allow it in principle. The reason it never happens is statistical, not physical. There are vastly more ways for atoms to be arranged as broken glass than as an intact glass. The universe does not forbid order. It simply overwhelmingly favors disorder because there are so many more disordered configurations. This is why entropy increases, not because the universe wants chaos, but because chaos is more likely. The same logic applies everywhere. Heat spreads out because there are more ways for energy to be evenly distributed than concentrated. Gas fills a room because there are more ways for molecules to be spread out than confined to a corner. Order is rare. Disorder is common. The arrow of time is the arrow of probability. This leads to a crucial realization. The direction we associate with time is not built into the laws of physics. It emerges from statistics, from counting possibilities. This is deeply unintuitive. We are taught that time flows forward because of physical causation. But causation itself relies on entropy. Causes lead to effects, because effects usually involve higher entropy states than causes. When entropy increases, we interpret the direction of increase as forward in time, reverse entropy, and the arrow would flip. But here is where things become strange. Most fundamental physical laws are time-symmetric. If you record a microscopic interaction and play it backward, the equations still work. The motion is allowed. There is no built-in preference for past or future. This includes Newton's laws, electromagnetism, and even quantum mechanics at its core. Apart from a few subtle exceptions, physics does not care which way time points. And yet, the world we experience is not symmetric. So where does the asymmetry come from? The answer lies not in the laws, but in the initial conditions of the universe. The universe began in a state of extremely low entropy. This is one of the most astonishing facts in all of science. At the beginning of cosmic history, matter and energy were arranged in an incredibly special, highly ordered way. From that rare starting point, entropy had nowhere to go but up. Once entropy starts increasing, it defines a direction. That direction becomes the arrow of time. Importantly, entropy does not create time. It creates direction. Time might exist as a dimension without direction, much like space. But entropy gives it orientation, just as a slope gives direction to motion. This distinction matters. If entropy had started decreasing instead of increasing, we would experience time in reverse. We would remember what we call the future and forget what we call the past. Broken things would reassemble. Smoke would return to the cigarette. This sounds absurd, but only because our brains evolved inside an entropy-increasing universe, which brings us to memory. Memory is not neutral with respect to time. Memory formation requires entropy increase. When your brain stores information, it consumes energy and generates heat. That process increases entropy. Recording the past is physically linked to disorder. You cannot form memories of the future because the future has not yet produced entropy in your environment. Memory is not a window into time. It is a record of entropy gradients. This is why we remember the past, but not the future. Not because the future does not exist, but because information flows in only one direction when entropy increases. The brain reads traces left behind by entropy-increasing processes. The past leaves footprints. The future does not. This also explains why the present feels special. The present is the moment where entropy is increasing locally, where information is being created and recorded. The past feels fixed because its entropy increase has already happened. The future feels open because its entropy increase has not yet occurred. Again, this has nothing to do with the fundamental laws caring about time's direction. It has everything to do with statistics. This realization overturns a deeply held intuition. Time does not flow because the universe pushes it forward. Time flows because the universe started in a very special state and has been statistically relaxing ever since. The arrow of time is not a fundamental force. It is a historical accident. This raises a troubling question. Why did the universe begin in such a low entropy state? Physics does not yet have a complete answer. But whatever the explanation, the consequence is clear. Entropy increase defines the direction of time we experience. Without entropy gradients, there would be no arrow, no memory, no causation as we understand it, no sense of past and future. In a universe at maximum entropy, time would lose its meaning entirely. Nothing would change in any meaningful way. There would be no structure to experience. Time would still exist as a dimension, but nothing would happen within it. This shows how deeply time's direction is tied to change and information. It also reveals something unsettling. The arrow of time is not universal. It depends on conditions. It emerges locally. In principle, different regions of the universe could have different arrows of time if their entropy gradients differed. Time's direction is not a law. It is an outcome. This also explains why everyday experience feels so irreversible. We live in a universe far from equilibrium, with enormous entropy gradients. Stars burn, planets cool, life feeds on energy differences. All of this creates a powerful sense of forward motion. But at the microscopic level, that motion dissolves. Zoom in far enough, and time loses its direction. Zoom out to human scale, and the arrow becomes overwhelming. This is why time feels real. Not because it is fundamental, but because entropy is everywhere. The arrow of time is not written into the equations of physics. It is written into the history of the universe. Once this is understood, a profound shift occurs. The question is no longer, why does time move forward? The question becomes, why did entropy ever start increasing? And that question points backward, not forward. It points to the beginning of the universe, where time's arrow was set by initial conditions, not laws. This also reframes the fear of time passing. Time is not an unstoppable river carrying us toward decay. It is a measure of how systems relax, from rare states to common ones. Life exists because entropy increases, not despite it. Living systems maintain local order by exporting disorder to their surroundings. We are not fighting entropy. We are expressions of it. In this sense, entropy does not steal meaning from time. It gives time its texture, but it also exposes the illusion. The arrow we experience is not a fundamental property of reality. It is a statistical trend, a bias in probability, a shadow cast by initial conditions. Time's direction comes from statistics, not physics itself, and that leaves us with a final, unsettling insight. If the arrow of time is emergent, not fundamental, then time itself may be emergent too. Not something the universe runs on, but something that appears when conditions allow it. Which lead, if time is not fundamental and its direction is statistical, what happens when we step back and look at the universe as a whole? Does the universe exist in time at all? Or is time something that exists only for observers like us? That is where the story goes next. If physics weakens the foundation of time, perception builds it back up again. No matter what equations say, we experience time with extraordinary intensity. It feels continuous, directional, and deeply personal. This feeling does not come from space-time or entropy alone. It comes from the mind. Time, as we experience it, is not something we detect, like light or sound. It is something the brain constructs. The key ingredient in this construction is memory. Without memory, there is no past, not philosophically, but psychologically. The brain does not store time itself. It stores records, traces of previous states, patterns left behind by interactions with the world. When these traces are arranged, the mind interprets them as a sequence. Memory creates the feeling of before. Imagine waking up with no memory at all, no recollection of yesterday, no knowledge of your name, no sense of what just happened. In that state, time collapses into a single, eternal moment. There is awareness, but no flow, no narrative, no continuity. Clinical cases confirm this. People with severe memory disorders often lose their sense of time. They do not experience life as a story moving forward. They experience isolated moments, disconnected from one another. Time, for them, does not flow. This reveals something fundamental. The past does not exist in the mind as a location. It exists as stored information. When information is absent, the past vanishes. The future is constructed differently. The brain constantly simulates possible outcomes. It predicts danger, reward, and opportunity. This ability evolved for survival. An organism that can anticipate what might happen has an advantage over one that cannot. These simulations create the feeling of after. Together, memory and prediction form the backbone of time perception. The past is remembered. The future is imagined. The present sits between them, acting as a reference point. But this present moment is not as solid as it feels. Neuroscience shows that the now we experience is not instantaneous. It is a short window, roughly a few seconds wide, during which the brain integrates sensory information. What feels like a sharp present is actually a blended construction. The brain smooths experience to create continuity. Sounds arrive at different times. Light reaches the eyes before touch reaches the skin. Neural signals travel at different speeds. The brain compensates by assembling these signals into a coherent moment. The result feels immediate, but it is already slightly in the past. The present is not a point. It is a process. This process gives rise to the sensation of flow. Consciousness feels like it moves because the window of integration is constantly updating. New information enters. Old information fades. The window slides forward. Consciousness acts like a moving spotlight. This spotlight does not reveal time. It creates it. Wherever the spotlight rests feels like now. Where it has passed becomes then. Where it has not yet reached becomes later. The sense of movement comes not from time itself, but from the updating of awareness. This explains why time feels flexible. When attention is focused, the spotlight narrows. Time seems to slow down. When attention is scattered or absorbed, the spotlight widens. Time seems to speed up. The external world has not changed. Only the processing has. This also explains why time speeds up with age. Children experience the world with novelty. Everything is new. The brain records rich detail. Many memories are formed. When looking back, the past feels long because it is dense with information. As we age, novelty decreases. Days become routine. Fewer new memories are stored. When we reflect, the past feels compressed. Years seem to disappear. Time did not speed up. Memory density changed. This is one of the clearest demonstrations that time, as experienced, is not an external flow. It is an internal measurement based on information processing. The brain does not count seconds. It counts change. This is why emotionally intense moments feel long in the moment, but short in memory. while boring periods feel long in memory, but short in experience. Different systems are at work. In the moment, attention dominates. In retrospect, memory dominates. Time bends accordingly. Altered states of consciousness reveal this even more clearly. In deep meditation, practitioners often report losing the sense of time entirely. Minutes or hours pass unnoticed. The present moment expands. The usual narrative structure dissolves. This is not mystical. It is neurological. Meditation reduces the brain's tendency to constantly predict and evaluate. The future loses urgency. Memory loses grip. Without strong prediction and recall, the scaffolding of time weakens. What remains is awareness without direction. Similarly, in states of flow, athletes, musicians, and artists often report timelessness. Action happens effortlessly. There is no past or future, only immersion. The sense of time disappears, not because time stops, but because the brain stops tracking it. Psychedelic experiences offer another window. Under certain substances, the brain's normal integration patterns are disrupted. The sense of sequence can fragment, past and future blur. Some report experiencing all moments at once, or stepping outside time entirely. Again, this does not mean time objectively disappears. It means the brain's time model breaks down. Even trauma can distort time. During extreme stress, moments can feel stretched. The brain floods with detail. Time slows subjectively. This heightened recording may have survival value, allowing rapid response. Time expands when survival demands it. All of these states point to the same conclusion. Time perception is not fixed. It is a constructed feature of consciousness. This does not make it trivial. The construction is powerful because it is useful. It allows planning, learning, social coordination, identity. Without time perception, personal continuity would dissolve. You would not feel like the same person from one moment to the next. Time is the glue of selfhood. The sense of being you across moments depends on memory and narrative. The brain stitches experiences together into a coherent story. That story unfolds in time. Take away time, and the story collapses. This is why time feels existentially important. It is not just about clocks, it is about identity. When people fear running out of time, they fear losing the ability to continue their story. When they regret the past, they mourn chapters they cannot rewrite. When they worry about the future, they worry about chapters yet to be lived. Time is not just experienced, it is lived. But recognizing its constructed nature changes our relationship to it. If time is an interface rather than a fundamental force, then we are not prisoners of a cosmic clock. We are participants in a cognitive process. This does not mean we can escape time at will. The brain's construction is deeply embedded. But it does mean the experience of time can be softened, expanded, or reframed. Mindfulness does this by anchoring attention in sensation rather than narrative. Therapy does this by reorganizing memory. Learning does this by increasing novelty. Art does this by suspending ordinary flow. Time is not something we have less of as we age. It is something we experience differently. This insight aligns with everything physics has suggested so far. Time may not be a universal river. It may be a local phenomenon, emerging when systems record change. The brain is such a system. Consciousness does not move through time. It samples states. The order of sampling creates the feeling of motion. From this perspective, time is not a dimension we travel through. It is a way consciousness organizes reality. This does not diminish meaning. In fact, it deepens it. Moments are not valuable because they are scarce in an objective sense. They are valuable because attention gives them weight. Presence gives them depth. A single moment of clarity can outweigh years of unconscious habit. A brief connection can matter more than a long routine. Duration is not meaning. Awareness is. This prepares us for the next step in the journey. If time emerges from memory, entropy, and perception, then what happens when we step back even further? Does the universe itself exist in time? Or is time something that exists only for observers embedded within it? To answer that, we must confront the most radical idea yet: the possibility that past, present, and future all exist at once. And that is where the story goes next. If time is not fundamental, if its direction comes from entropy, and if its experience is constructed by the brain, then a final possibility emerges. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself loudly. It simply follows. What if the universe does not flow at all? What if nothing is actually moving from past to future? What if everything already exists? This idea is known as the block universe, and despite how radical it sounds, it arises naturally from modern physics. It is not a philosophical escape. It is a structural description of reality, suggested by relativity itself. In this view, the universe is not a three-dimensional space that updates moment by moment. It is a four-dimensional structure where space and time are woven together. Every event, past, present, and future, is part of this structure. Nothing is being created in time. Nothing is being erased by it. Reality simply exists. To understand this, imagine a book. The entire story exists at once. Every chapter, every page, every word is already there. The story does not flow. When you read it, you experience sequence. You move from page to page. The sense of progression comes from the reader, not from the book. The block universe suggests reality works the same way. The universe does not unfold. We experience it sequentially because we are inside it, not because it is changing. This idea follows directly from relativity. As we saw earlier, physics does not allow a universal present. Different observers, moving differently or sitting in different gravitational fields, disagree on which events are happening now. There is no single moment shared by the entire cosmos. If the present is not universal, then dividing reality into past, present, and future cannot be fundamental. Those divisions depend on perspective, not on reality itself. The only consistent conclusion is that all events must exist equally. In the block universe, time is treated the same way as space. Just as all locations in space exist at once, all moments in time exist at once. You do not say a distant galaxy is less real because you are not there. Likewise, the future is not less real because you are not experiencing it yet. You are not moving through time as an object moves through space. You are a structure extended across time. Your life is a continuous path laid out within space-time, from birth to death, fully contained within the universe. Your childhood still exists. Your present experience exists. Your future experiences exist. They are not waiting to happen. They are not being created moment by moment. They are part of the structure. Change exists as relationships between events, Growth exists as structure. Aging exists as variation along a world line. What disappears is the idea that the universe itself is updating. Events do not happen in time. Events define time. This reverses our usual assumption. We tend to imagine time as a container and events as things placed inside it. Physics suggests the opposite. Events exist first. Time is simply the ordering of those events. Remove the events, and time has no meaning. This does not make the universe static or frozen. It makes it complete. From inside the structure, consciousness experiences change because it samples different parts of the block. Memory accesses earlier regions. Anticipation imagines later ones. The feeling of flow arises naturally, but the structure itself does not move. This distinction is subtle but essential. The universe does not carry you forward. Awareness moves across an already existing landscape. From this perspective, nothing is ever lost. The past is not destroyed. It is simply not where awareness currently is. The future is not unreal. It is simply unexperienced. This has profound implications. The present moment is not special to the universe. It is special to you. Physics does not privilege now. Consciousness does. Causality still exists in this picture. Causes and effects are not sequences unfolding in time. They are relationships between events within spacetime. One event lies in the causal structure of another, if signals can connect them. Causality is geometric, not temporal. Even entropy fits naturally into this view. Low entropy states connect to high entropy states along world lines. The arrow of time exists as a pattern within the block, not as a force pushing reality forward. The block universe does not remove choice or meaning. It removes only the assumption that the future must be empty in order for choice to matter. Your decisions are still causes. They still shape which events occur along your path. They are not overwritten by timelessness. They are written into it. Your life is not a sequence being generated. It is a whole. This idea can feel unsettling because it challenges urgency. It challenges the belief that meaning depends on moments slipping away. But physics does not support that belief. Nothing in the universe is racing against time, and neither are you. The block universe is not the end of mystery. It is the point where the mystery becomes personal. If everything already exists, then meaning cannot come from fighting time. It must come. It must come from how we inhabit reality. And that question leads directly to the fear most people feel next. If time is not flowing, what happens to meaning, choice, and death? What happens to meaning if time isn't real? When the idea of a timeless universe is first encountered, it rarely feels neutral. It feels threatening. If time does not flow, if past and future already exist, then something essential seems to slip away. The fear is not scientific. It is human. If time isn't real, does choice still matter? If everything already exists, is free will an illusion? If moments do not pass, what does death even mean? These questions arise naturally. They do not come from misunderstanding physics. They come from caring about life. We believe life matters because it ends. Remove the flow of time, and it can feel as though meaning collapses with it. But that collapse only happens if meaning depends on disappearance. Physics suggests something quieter and far more radical. Timelessness does not erase meaning, it reframes it. Let us begin with free will, because this is where fear is strongest. If the universe is a block, if your entire life already exists as a structure in space-time, then how can your choices be real? Does this not mean everything is predetermined? This fear assumes that free will requires the future to be non-existent. But free will has never required that. Free will is not about creating the future out of nothing. It is about being the cause of what happens. In a timeless universe, your decisions are still causes. They are still the reasons later events occur. They are not overwritten. They are not bypassed. They are part of the structure. In a timeless universe, your decisions are still causes. They are still the reasons later events occur. They are not overwritten. They are not bypassed. They are part of the structure. Think of a path drawn on paper. The path exists as a whole, but each turn along the path still depends on the choices that define it. The experience of choosing is not invalidated by the path's existence. Your will is not outside the universe, injecting novelty into it. Your will is inside the universe, shaping which events occur along your world line. Nothing about timelessness removes agency. It removes only the illusion that the future waits in a blank state for us to fill it. What we call the future is simply the part of the structure we have not experienced yet. Your choices still matter because they are written into reality itself. Then death cannot mean erasure. It cannot mean being wiped from existence by the passage of time. Instead, death becomes a boundary in space-time, a limit to experience, not a destruction of what has been lived. Your life does not disappear when it ends. It remains. Every moment you have lived remains exactly where it is, in space-time, permanently part of the universe. Your childhood does not fade away. Your laughter does not vanish. Your struggles are not overwritten. They exist as real events, just not where consciousness currently rests. This idea directly challenges how we grieve. We grieve because we believe moments are taken from us, because we believe the past is gone. But in a timeless universe, the past is not gone. It is simply not present. Absence is not annihilation. But in a timeless universe, the past is not gone. It is simply not present. Absence is not annihilation. Think again of the book. When you finish reading a chapter, the chapter does not cease to exist. It remains exactly as it was. You cannot return to it in the same way, but it has not been destroyed. A life is not meaningful because it ends. It is meaningful because it exists. This reframing is subtle but profound. It shifts value away from scarcity and toward presence. Moments are not precious because they are fleeting. They are precious because they are real. Every experience you have ever had is permanently written into the universe. Nothing can erase it. This does not trivialize suffering. Pain is still pain. Loss is still loss. But it changes the background against which these experiences occur. The universe is not erasing what you have been. It is holding it. In this view, death is not the universe taking something away. It is the end of a sequence of experiences along a particular path. The path remains, but it changes the background against which these experiences occur. The universe is not erasing what you have been. It is holding it. In this view, death is not the universe taking something away. It is the end of a sequence of experiences along a particular path. The path remains. Now consider endings more broadly. We often believe meaning comes from narrative closure, from beginnings and endings, from progress and resolution. But narratives do not require time to flow. They require structure. A novel does not lose meaning because all its chapters exist at once. A symphony does not lose beauty because all its notes are written down. Meaning is not created by disappearance. It is created by relationship. Your life is not a process that vanishes. It is a structure that exists. This is where the most powerful reframing emerges. Moments do not vanish. They persist. The present moment feels special because it is where awareness currently rests. But the universe does not privilege it. All moments are equally real. What changes is perspective, not existence. This idea can feel comforting or unsettling, depending on how deeply one has tied meaning to urgency. Modern life trains us to fear running out of time. Productivity culture turns time into currency. We measure worth by efficiency, speed, and accumulation. The idea that time does not flow threatens this entire framework. But physics is not obligated to preserve our anxieties. If time is not something the universe spends, then you are not being drained by existence. You are not racing against a cosmic clock. You are inhabiting a structure. Your life is not slipping away. It is already there. This does not mean nothing changes. Change exists within the structure. Growth exists. Learning exists. But they are not racing toward disappearance. They are features of the pattern. This perspective also reshapes responsibility. If every experience exists forever as part of the universe, then actions carry a different weight. Not because they echo into a fragile future, but because they are permanently written into reality. Kindness is not meaningful because it passes. It is meaningful because it exists. Cruelty is not erased by time. It remains part of the universe's structure. This is not moral judgment imposed by physics. It is a consequence of permanence. In a timeless universe, nothing is undone by time. This can feel heavy, but it can also feel grounding. It invites a slower, more intentional way of living. One that values presence over accumulation, depth over speed, awareness over urgency. If moments do not vanish, then being fully present is not about saving time. It is about honoring reality. This also dissolves a common existential fear, the fear that life is meaningless because it is temporary. Temporariness may not be the source of meaning at all. A mountain does not need to erode to be meaningful. A star does not need to explode to be real. Meaning arises from being part of the structure, not from disappearing from it. Your life does not need to be brief to matter. It matters because it exists. This perspective does not demand belief. It does not require comfort. It simply follows from treating time as a dimension rather than a flow. From this viewpoint, the universe is not a place where things happen and vanish. It is a place where everything that happens is held. Your fears, your hopes, your loves, your mistakes, all of it exists forever. This does not mean you are trapped. It means you are included. And that inclusion extends beyond individual lives. Human history is not lost to the past. It is present in the structure of space-time. Every conversation, every discovery, every act of compassion exists where it occurred. The universe is not forgetting us. We forget because our consciousness moves. This realization gently shifts the question from what happens to meaning if time isn't real to something deeper. What happens to meaning if existence itself is permanent? Meaning no longer comes from racing against time. It comes from how we occupy our position within reality. You do not need time to flow, to live fully. You need awareness. You need connection. You need presence. The universe does not demand urgency. It does not demand productivity. It does not demand that you outrun time. It simply contains you. And that containment does not reduce meaning. It deepens it. Because in a timeless universe, nothing you have lived is ever lost. And that changes everything. And living with that understanding does not lead to detachment. It leads to presence. Not because time is running out, but because reality is already full, and you are part of it.